I'm Alan Weiss, and this is The Writing on the Wall.
Welcome back to The Writing on the Wall. This episode is fun times. I did a program recently and my son sat in. And when we were talking about feedback, my son said to me in front of the group, "I think I have you figured out now finally." I said, "Well, that's nice, after 40 some odd years. What'd you figure out?" And my son said, "You don't have a life of business and personal, you have one life." You've heard me say this in past episodes. He said, "But you only do what you love doing. You don't do things you don't love doing." And he's exactly right. Have you ever watched jazz musicians in particular? I mean, most musicians, but jazz musicians in particular, they're always happy. Even the guys in the back who aren't doing a solo, who aren't featured, they're happy. They're having a good time. I have a friend up at Harvard, I think he's retired now, Dan Gilbert. He wrote Stumbling Onto Happiness. He spoke for me at one of my events, a professor of psychology, brilliant guy. And synthetic happiness is saying, well, when I got fired, it's the best thing that ever happened to me. As opposed to what? Legitimate happiness. We've had a birth, we've had an anniversary, we've had some good fortune. But synthetic happiness is when you say, yes, I broke my arm in the ski slopes, but I learned a valuable lesson. And the studies show that synthetic happiness is as important as real happiness in keeping us up and motivated. Dan found that people who admit to believing in God are no happier than people who admit to not believing in God. But then he found that people who admit to attending church are happier than people who admit that they don't attend church. And he speculated that it's a sense of community that creates happiness. Not the belief in God, but a sense of assembly and getting together with people with kindred spirits. I said to him, "You're speculating that people who attend church are happier than others. How do you know that happier people don't more naturally simply attend church?" And in all his candor, he said, "We don't." It's an interesting thing to look at. So if you look at people who are happy, the love of the game alleviates the pressure on athletes. And whether it's Michael Jordan or Sandy Koufax, or Tom Brady, they love the game, so they can perform well under pressure. If you're worried about how much you're being paid or whether you'll be traded or something at home, you're not going to be able to deal with the pressure as well. Many years ago, they televised high school games in New Jersey. And they had announcers and so forth. And in this one game, there was an all-star guy on this one team. He was a fantastic player. And at the end of the game, in regulation time, his team was down 2 points. And he was foul shooting. He missed the shot, but he had 2 foul shots. So with no time left, he had to make these 2 foul shots to tie the game going to overtime. And one of his teammates was giving a little pep talk. And the guy's at the free throw line, and he winked. He just winked at the guy like, "I got this." And he made them both, and they won in overtime. I love that kind of calmness. He was having a good time. During World War II, in a 2-ocean war, a 2-front war, Franklin Roosevelt gave himself some time to work on his stamp collection. He was a well-known philatelist. That's not a dirty term. He was a well-known stamp collector. And he gave himself time to work and to give himself some pleasure. Churchill was famous, if you've ever watched any of these things on Netflix, Churchill was famous for smoking his cigars and drinking his whiskey in the bathtub while he worked on important government documents on a platform over his stomach. Sherman, the great Civil War general, William Tecumseh Sherman, said that it's a good thing war is so awful, or we come to love it too much, because he enjoyed being a general so much. When I find myself saying I have to work on my hobby, I collect stamps, I work on models, I have electric trains, I have these cars, but when I say I have to work on my hobby, I stop doing it, I suspend it for a while, because a hobby shouldn't be work. It should be pleasure. It should be a relief. I give frequent flyer points away, frequent stayer points, all this nonsense. because I can't stand the work of cashing them in. I can't stand the waits on the phone. I can't stand the computer forms. I hate it all. I give them to my family. I'll give them to others if I have to. I hate doing it. My daughter wanted to go someplace with my wife and our 2 grandchildren. And she said, well, what's your Marriott account? I mean, I haven't stayed at Marriott's in ages, although Marriott's own things like Ritz-Carlton's, and I didn't even know this, W Hotels. I gave her my codes, and she found out I had 2 million points. I never feel guilty about having fun. I never tell myself I should be working. If I'm having fun, I'm having fun. It's going to help me in the long run. I mean, hell, I collect rocks. Wherever I go in the world, I pick up a rock. I bring it home, and I take one of these scriptos, and I put on it, you know, Grand Canyon, Bora Bora, and the date. I have rocks all over my den. And occasionally I look up, and I say to these rocks, if it weren't for me, you wouldn't know each other. Of course, the same thing applies to people in my community. If it weren't for me, they wouldn't know each other. And so I ask you, are you having fun? You're responsible, not someone else. Are you having fun? We have a new puppy, Royce, white German Shepherd. He does nothing but have fun. Nice to have him around.